Hey there, art nerds. So Prime Day has passed and I wanted to share some of my arty watercolory haul with you guys today. Hey there, art nerds. So I have a big old pile of art related stuff that I wanted to share with you guys. This was all purchased during Amazon Prime Day. I apologize that I wasn't super active sharing deals or anything like that. It is generally a really fun thing to be able to do. My life has just been very, very busy lately, so that's not really feasible for me. But I wanted to show you guys some of the things I found and talk to you guys about a few of them. So we are going to start with some Artagrea premium quality watercolor art brushes. I have two of these. I have the feeling that these are probably Art Secret brushes, slightly rebranded. I've been prepping for an Amazon watercolor brush video again, so I can share some good finds with you guys. So we'll probably talk about these then. But these are their premium quality watercolor art brushes in the Intuition series, Finest Synthetic Squirrel. And this has two quills, and this is kind of like a full set of brushes. These are designed in Spain and manufactured in China. And these are for watercolor, gouache, ink, and fluid acrylics. Mostly though, I wanted to check out some art books. Now, theoretically, you can find art-related books on Kindle, and you can check them out from your library that way. It's really hard to read art books on Kindle. Believe me, I have tried, and my library branches don't have any more modern watercolor books. And since I am working on a series about art influencers, I wanted to be able to read and, reference some of the books that they've created when I'm actually talking about what they've produced, like in terms of products that they're selling, not the art that they're producing necessarily. I also would like to do a video where I just talk about different watercolor books and talk about whether I found them helpful or whether I would find them helpful if I were a beginner watercolor artist. I am currently reading Macachino's book and actually really enjoying it. So I'm hoping that it'll be like a bunch of cool resources to share, but regardless, it'll be nice to be able to talk about which books you guys might find beneficial versus which books are maybe a waste of your money. I did get the Little Local New Orleans Cookbook, and this is kind of inspired because I am working on a Louisiana cookbook, and I'm working on a cookbook that has recipes from my family and from Joseph's family. This is not a local artist. This person does a series of different cities' cookbooks. So that is, as somebody who wants to support New Orleans, less cool to me. But I do think the idea is really cool. And mine would be like a comic cookbook. So instead of just spot illustrations here and there, it would literally be comics demonstrating how to cook it. But, like to do a little bit of research. She was the editor at Vox as well. Let's see. I guess the writer. Now, see, this is something I don't like, okay? We have one name on the cover. I assume this name was the writer and the illustrator. No. She's the writer, and she was the editor at Vox Media's Eater Nola and the former publisher at Edible New Orleans. And she has an MA in philosophy from Tulane. I mean, it's cool that she went to Tulane, although philosophy does not make you good at cooking or good at writing necessarily. And then Courtney is the one who has done a bunch of these little cookbooks. What I want to know is if this is a series of cookbooks and Courtney's done the illustrations, why is it not her name on the cover or her name and Stephanie? And this is actually something a lot of comic artists and illustrators are really starting to get very vocal about because it's a huge problem. We don't get the recognition we deserve. And I think it is crummy to credit everything to the writer when, look at these very charming watercolor illustrations, right? They give you an idea of what the dish should look. Well, I say that there aren't as many as I had hoped. But it gives you, theoretically, it would give you an idea of what the dish is going to look like, what the ingredients that go into it would look like. Now, as a Louisiana artist who draws food, what I would like to know is why not, in general, I know why not for this one, because it is really more Courtney's series than Stephanie's series, why not go with a Louisiana artist for these kind of things? Someone who's familiar with the food and what the food is supposed to look like. But that is a statement perhaps for another time, a conversation for another day. So I also committed to buying How to Make Art for Joy's Sake. This is Christy Rice's book. I went with the spiral binding because I feel like this will hopefully be easier for me to work with and reference as we go. And this one is particularly important because I have her watercolor palette, and I want to be able to talk about both her watercolor palette and I don't know what this moldy looking thing is. Actually, this book looks kind of dirty and damaged, which is a shame because I believe I bought this book new. But, you know, it kind of makes sense because Joseph got Beowulf and it was like all water damage. So maybe it got damaged in shipping. I don't know. But I look forward to exploring this book and maybe talking about it with you guys when we talk about her watercolors. It's got some beautiful photos in it. But what I'm looking for in a watercolor how-to book is not beautiful photos. Those do help, but really good explanations, really good demonstrations, especially because some of you guys have pointed out to me that you don't really learn very well from video. You learn better from written step-by-step instructions. And as someone who has produced a lot of written step-by-step instructions over the years and has flirted with the idea of both doing how to do comics books as well as how to do watercolor for comics books, it's good to do your research and to see what's out there and to steal ideas and inspiration from people who have done it already. Why reinvent the wheel? So I'm really looking forward to checking this one out. I also got Botanical Art Techniques. I'm really excited about this one. This is the American Society of Botanical Artists. They talk about a variety of popular techniques within botanical art like watercolor, graphite, colored pencil, vellum, pen and ink, egg tempera, which I have zero experience in, and that's kind of cool, oils, printmaking, and more. But I had just like started flipping through, and I'd already seen a lot of just really cool basics, a lot of just interesting information that I would not have thought to do. But another thing I love is like the photos where they show you like how to do the flat lays and how to lay it out in a way that is more in keeping with botanical illustration. As somebody who doesn't have any background in that, I think it's really helpful. And I love when art books are really much more like taking a college class. That's not always feasible, but that's definitely what I wanted from this book, and it definitely looks like it's going to deliver. And that is a chunker of a book. So I am really looking forward to that one. So Jenna Rainey's Everyday Watercolor is one of those art influencer art books. So this is the loose watercolor florals that everyone is gaga over. Understandably so. It is gorgeous. This is one I checked out from my library through like Overdrive, I think, the online app. And I tried to read it on my Kindle, and the reading experience on Kindle for a book like this is abysmal. If you can read how-to art books on your Kindle, good on you. But it was a miserable experience, and I felt like I saw enough to know that I wanted to give it a better chance. So another spiral bound so I can crack this thing flat and be able to work from it. And hopefully, so I'm not looking to be able to do this. This is not my goal, but to have more expressive brush strokes, to have more spontaneous additions and flourishes in my art, to bring some liveliness and spontaneity to what I do. Because as an illustrator and a comic artist, my work is really mannered, really tight, very controlled. And this would really breathe some liveliness into it. So I'm not necessarily looking to do like these flowers in particular, but I'm looking to learn some brushwork techniques. I'm looking to learn some drill exercises. I'm looking to kind of change my mindset about watercolor, or learn, have a paradigm shift that will give me like a new set of skills. And I think it's kind of a really interesting contrast because we have the extremely tightly rendered, tightly mannered, photorealistic botanical art techniques where it's important that these look just like the plant because they're often used for plant identification. And then this is super loose, super abstracted, almost cartoony in a way, with the way the leaves have been abstracted and the way the flowers are abstracted. I would call that cartooning. So, you know, it's good to have different options. It's good to have different inspiration, and it's good to try and branch out of your comfort zone. The trick for me is going to be not just aspirational art buying, but actually sitting down and doing the exercises and putting the practice in to develop those skills. So this is a newer book. This is Shushma Hedges' Wildflower Watercolor, and I have been following her work on Instagram. I think it is absolutely gorgeous. This is kind of an in-between, right? Because the cone flowers are super identifiable. The poppies are super identifiable. The wisteria, those look like they might be violets, although they're kind of large for violets. The foxglove up there, right? Like, it's a nice in-between between like the really, really loose and the more mannered. But what I also like is the brushwork demonstrations. I do wish these took up, look how much page is wasted with like nothing. I don't understand at all. There's a lot of blank space where you could just make those photos much bigger. I don't know. I'm one to talk. If you guys have looked at the back of volume 2, I crammed every inch of space. So maybe I should not have an opinion on that. But I like that we get a look at the brushwork and hopefully explanation of like how to improve that brushwork. But I think her floral illustrations are just so charming. So that is at least super inspirational, if not something that I'm going to pick up for myself. We also have Irit Landgraf, and also a lot of these artists have YouTube channels as well. So I'm also kind of hoping that if I like crack down and practice along, I can turn to their YouTube channels for additional resources, right? Like that's the hope. So as we were just talking about, my watercolors are in some ways way too tight. And it would be fun to kind of loosen up and let go. So this is Watercolor Freedom, Painting Techniques to Unleash Creative Joy and Intuition. And this, I'm just going to be like real blunt. This printing feels like Create Space printing. I know what Create Space printing feels like, and this feels like it. I wonder if this was either self-published, no shame, I do the same thing, or if it was an imprint. I think it might be self-published. That is cool. Good on you. Cool. That I'm kind of like even more, I'm not, look, this is a Create Space comment, not a comment about this book. I don't love Create Space paper as someone who prints sometimes with Create Space or / Kindle KDP. That's why we went with a different printer for volume 2. And the only thing I think, just flipping through this book, that I think could be improved upon is the paper is super thin. It just doesn't hold the color as well. But, you know, as a fellow self-publisher, what can I say? You use the avenues that are available to you and you make the best out of them. And it's cool to be able to support somebody else who is tired of waiting on traditional publishing to recognize the value that they bring to the market, and they're going to do it for themselves. Good for you. And then finally in books, we have Color Harmony for Artists by Anna Victorian Calderon. I have one of her other books and I liked it, but it didn't go in depth enough. It was very project focused, and I'm not really looking project. I'm looking for ideas and techniques, but I'm hoping this one is going to be more inspiring for me. I do love the color palettes and then like the inspiration. That's actually really cool. I really like that. Man, it would be fun. I see sometimes people do like a painting and then they do the swatches on the side, and that is so aesthetic. That's not normal for me. I do my swatches on like a scrap piece of paper, but it is definitely very satisfying to look at. Ooh, there's even hair colors. I like that. So that is pretty cool. And this was published by Quarry. I have noticed that a lot, maybe not in this selection, this one's self-published, maybe not in this selection of books, but I have noticed that a lot of these kind of watercolor books, particularly the loose watercolor floral ones, Page Street publishes a lot of these. Actually, that's interesting. Watson Guptill published Everyday Watercolor. I really like one of their older, they have an older perspective book that I found really, really helpful. It's basically how I learned to do 1, 2, and 3 point perspective. And then finally, let me change the angle. This is so shiny. So Paul Rubens has introduced, they're calling it opaque watercolor. You might also know it as gouache. Paul Rubens has introduced a gouache to their lineup, and the price was basically $1 a tube. Super excited about this. We've talked about how I'm not particularly a gouache artist, but I am starting to utilize more of those techniques in my work from time to time. And also something about gouache is that it can be, with some caveats, watered down to be used sort of like watercolor. They have a lot of similar properties. They're not, exactly one-to-one, but there are a lot of artists who will use gouache as a watercolor, including the very esteemed James Gurney. So anyway, I'm really excited about this, especially as somebody who really enjoys Paul Rubens watercolor, and the price point was so good. So I'm really excited about this haul from Prime Day. It's a lot of books. I am really excited about that because some of these I can't find in like my local favorite art supply store, David's. I can't necessarily find them at Barnes & Noble. So, I mean, they've been living in my Amazon cart for about a month now, waiting for either them to drop in price or for them to go on sale. And some of them were Prime Day deals, but some of them we have an Amazon card and they were doing like an extra 2% cash back, like one of those kind of deals. So for some of them, that was also the justification, was like they're probably never going to get cheaper, or they might get cheaper like 5 years from now. So I wanted to take advantage of that little bit of savings. Now, I will say, I'm not telling you to run out and buy any of these things. I just wanted to share some of these cool things with you guys because I am going to be talking about some of them on the channel, and I'm hoping that some of them will have an impact on my art and will inspire my art. And I just wanted to kind of share the haul with you guys.